Hello everyone and welcome to AutoSense. My name is Lucky Papageorg. I am the Executive Director of the Alliance of Automotive Service Providers of Massachusetts. We are a collision-based association. An alliance is how we refer to ourselves, of body shop owners. We have technicians that are members of our association and affiliate industries. We are here to service the consumers who have been involved in collision losses. And part of the reason for AutoSense as a TV show is to bring you information regarding what your rights are, what you need to know when it comes to collision repair, from the aspects of your insurance policy and premiums that you have to pay, what your rights are within that policy, and your rights to choose whatever repair facility you want to have repair your vehicle and not necessarily be directed to a facility that the insurance company wants you to go to that they've rented into a contract with. Every body shop that I am aware of guarantees their work, warranties their work. There are certain things that you should look for when you go into a collision repair facility. One, that they're a registered repair shop and have certifications per se regarding the different aspects of the repair policy and procedures. It is critical that you do understand your rights, however, because you are the person who will ultimately be responsible for the costs of the repair of that vehicle. Your insurance company is there to cover that loss, but in many instances, they try to avoid certain aspects of the repair that still have to be performed and have a cost associated with them. So today, what we're going to focus in on a little bit is we have a return guest, Peter Brown from Tiny & Sons Auto Glass. Thanks for joining us again, Peter.
Thank you, Lucky.
In the previous session, we talked a little bit about what some of the issues are that consumers run into when it comes to glass replacement. The importance that even though the glass has been replaced, it's set perfectly where it should be on the vehicle by trained technicians at a registered glass facility who understands and is a part of your association per se and understands the safety glass standards. What other types of things should consumers look for when they go into a glass repair facility?
Well, the consumer, it's just like you're looking for an auto mechanic or an auto body technician. You want to look for those certifications. You also want to look for their accreditations as far as the town and the state. Make sure they're registered with the Department of Standards. They have that RG number. That's a big giveaway if they're a shop that's reputable. And then you ask them questions about the materials and if they follow the Auto Glass Safety Council standard, and if they have certified technicians.
So the standards, I assume that's in some sort of a published book?
Yes, yep. The ANSI standard is a published application. It's right here. You can go right onto the website and pull it off. This was created in 1999. It was for the American National Standards. And it's a criteria of an application for technicians to follow for a proper windshield installation and repair.
That's great. Yeah, it's always good to have something that you can show a consumer. I know from the collision standpoint that we use the OEM manufacturer's requirements or recommendations as a tool to arm the consumer when it comes to making sure that the repair is done properly and that they're being reimbursed properly through their insurance policy. One of the things that we're facing in the collision repair industry and have for quite a while is the fact that technology is changing at such a rapid pace that trying to keep up with the training, the equipment, and also be able to pay our technicians what they're worth and entice people into the industry is becoming a real issue. And unfortunately, there's the lack of knowledge or the lack of understanding of how important things like calibration, pre and post scanning are to the repair process and now the glass replacement process. Can you touch a little bit on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the pre-scan has been new to us as far as an industry as a whole, and we started doing pre-scans about 4 years ago, and this was before we really got into the calibration aspect of it. We had an outside vendor come in and do our calibrations. But on the pre-scan itself, specifically, that pulls up codes that we're replacing the windshield. A lot of these windshields have technology attached to the glass. If there's a code there for some reason, it might not be able to recalibrate or reinitialize the glass because of that code. So now we're doing pre-scans, and sometimes we can't do the installation until that code is fixed.
In advance, right?
Exactly.
And that's something that, again, from a consumer standpoint, they need to understand advanced driver assistance systems.
Yeah.
And it's systems. Everything in a vehicle nowadays is linked together.
Correct.
You know, in past shows, I've made the comment about the fact that there is more code in today's vehicles than in the rockets that went to the moon.
Right.
And they're constantly interacting, and soon they're going to be interacting with vehicles around them. You know, they'll be able to pick up that type of information. And that's why the calibration is so critical to the vehicle functioning properly, and not just for you after your vehicle's been repaired, for you, but also the people that are sharing the road with you.
Right.
I know we're going to look at a slide a little bit later, but if the vehicle isn't calibrated right, because the front-facing camera is looking at the vehicle in front of it, it's looking at the sidelines, making sure that you're staying within your lane, it's keeping you centered. I mean, I know I drive a vehicle that has the ability to drive itself. I'm still amazed by it. I've got nearly 100% confidence in it, but you know, you're always ready for it. But if that calibration is off, you know, and we've said it in the past, all it has to be off is 1/16 of an inch, which is just the width of a penny.
Right.
And the naked eye can't pick that up. And you may think you snapped, in your case, snapped that front-facing camera into the right location on the bracket, but depending on where, you know, you're obviously setting the glass as close as it was as possible to when it left the factory. Right. But you could be off just a little bit.
Right.
And that's all going to have an effect.
And that's the importance of the calibration, because the calibration will pick that up. And a lot of times the bracket might be perfect, but it could be the camera placement that was off. So we've had in case, and I'll tell you, I could tell you multiple times, where we've had to detach the camera and remount it, and then it was fine. But unless the technician did the recalibration right after that windshield replacement, the customer would have never known.
Right.
So we talked about earlier, you know, about mobile replacement. You could still do mobile replacement, but you have to have that second aspect in play. So you have to have that calibration done directly after windshield replacement, so they can see that, to make sure that the camera is mounted properly, everything was in place, so you don't get that off.
Right. So the slide that we're looking at, that big black area at the top of the windshield, is where the technology is mounted.
Exactly.
And it's the eyes for the vehicle, basically,
Exactly.
and looking down the road.
Yep.
So if that's off even 1/16 of an inch, as it travels down the road, that variance gets broadened.
Yeah, you're talking like a quarter of a mile, it could be off, you know, a foot or 2 feet over the yellow line. And people are getting used to the driver technology. They don't know what the technology is, but they're getting used to it because they're multitasking all the time while they're driving,
Right.
and they're waiting for that alert.
Right.
So if that alert is off by a foot, there's a bus, and that's it.
Yep,
You know what I mean?
exactly. So what we're looking at now is, it appears to me, anyways, it's a piece of glass that's been removed from a vehicle or
Right.
getting ready to be installed. It's on a rack. What is it that we're looking at?
So this is a Volvo. So this has the cityscape. So that's the dual camera in the front. That square at the bottom, that's the rain sensor.
Okay.
So that right there is the automatic rain sensor. So right there, there's a lot of technology that's in that box.
Right.
But they don't see that from the inside, because all they see is that nice little piece of plastic
Right.
that covers all that.
Right, and you literally, when you replace the windshield, the bracketing is there on the new windshield that you're
Correct.
putting in, and then you transfer.
Correct. You can see the metal snaps. Everything snaps into.
Yep.
There's a gel that we have to replace when we take the rain sensor cover off, that we have to put a new gel sensor on there, and that gets attached, and then it's all tested when it's done.
But even there, obviously, you know, even being a trained technician, there's always that human error,
Yeah.
a little bit off, like I said, the 1/16, the width of a penny.
Yep.
And what are we looking at here?
This is a Ford Transit van, so this is the multi-purpose bracket that they have. So you have the dual cameras, you see the mirror mount at the top, you see the plugins for the heating sensor, that's the rain sensor in the middle. So there's a lot going on in this one bracket.
Right.
And if you see those two plugins, that's fiber optic. So you have to be careful when you're disconnecting and reconnecting, because if you stretch it, you're out.
It's gone, right?
Yeah.
They're very fragile.
Exactly.
So once the windshield has been put in place, from my standpoint, let's say I'm just a consumer, somebody came to my home,
Yes.
did a mobile replacement, I go out and I look at it, there's no telltale marks, there's no dripping urethane, everything looks nice and pristine, there's no cracks any longer. What are my concerns?
So a lot of the new technology that you don't know that it's out of alignment until you get into an accident. It doesn't. Some of them don't throw codes. Like the Mercedes specifically, you could do a windshield in the customer's driveway, and the Mercedes doesn't pick it up. It still sees it, still all that until you get into that auto brake system, and it's not braking the exact foot that it's supposed to be braking.
Right.
It doesn't throw a code.
So just for the consumer standpoint, when we say throw a code, it's a fault code.
Yeah, it'll show you an alert.
Right.
That little X that says you got a problem with your airbag or you got a problem with your driver assist system, it doesn't throw it.
Right, and in the old days, we used to refer to your dashboard and the lights that would come on as your idiot lights.
Correct.
But now, there are so many different aspects of the vehicle that it does a self-test, a self-diagnosis of itself when you start the car.
Right.
Only certain things will pop on you. Let's say you have a low pressure in a tire, that's typically on your dashboard.
Right.
But it's not going to tell you that the rain sensor is not working. You're not going to find that out until you're going down the road and you're used to your wipers coming on. If they get a little misty, they'll come on, they'll stop, and they'll come on again. So at first blush, when you look at your vehicle, you think everything is fine. There's no idiot lights on. That's the real reason for what we refer to as a post scan,
Correct.
which lets you know that there is a code that's showing that needs to be cleared. And I think I've heard that in the past there's aspects of those codes that need to be cleared before you can even attempt a calibration.
Correct.
Because it could stop the calibration from
Right.
going through.
Right.
So in the instance that we're looking at, this camera was replaced, or however it became out of calibration, out of alignment, but it's showing that what the vehicle is looking at is the structure, the stop sign, the telephone pole, a hydrant. It sees those to be 10 feet further down the road
Right.
than what they actually are. In other words, they're 10 feet closer to the vehicle than the car thinks. So that's 10 feet less of braking power. And that's the understanding of it, right? That a lot of that advanced driver assistance systems deals with the braking, automatic braking of the vehicle. We've seen all the ads on TV. The family that gets saved because the car put its brakes on, didn't skid, it did it all. 10 feet more or less means a huge difference.
That's right. And that's the liability where you have to really think through who you choose for your replacement or your repair or your body work.
Right.
Because you can't tell that until you get into that situation.
Well, and I think part of it also goes to that old adage of you don't know what you don't know.
Correct.
If you are a consumer who, in years past was just used to, you bouncing your car after the windshield's been replaced and off down the road you go,
Yep.
and everything's great. Nowadays, you've got basically you could have a lethal weapon in front of you.
Right.
You'd be driving it, and again, my biggest fear has always been people say, well, we're worried about the driver of that vehicle that's just been repaired. We're actually worried about every vehicle on the road that's sharing the road with that repaired vehicle.
Right.
Because if it thinks that you're 10 feet further down the road before it puts the brakes on, you're going to have a rear end collision.
Correct.
Or you're going to, drift into the lane, because that's, again, one of the aspects of the advanced driver assistance systems. It keeps you in the center of your lane. If you start drifting, bells, whistles, any number of indicators go off and get you back where you belong.
Right.
And as you indicated, people are becoming more and more reliant on it, rightfully or wrongfully so, but they are. And the fact that if a glass has been replaced, or if you've been in a collision, there are so many different sensors on the vehicles nowadays. Again, I think I may have started off the program with it, that a lot of people, have joked about that fact that ADAS stands for ain't doing anything safely. But it's a matter of the knowledge, not just of the technicians, but of the consumers, to know what questions to ask and what to look for when they go into a facility. Are there certain logos or accreditations that one would want to see when they go into a glass facility?
Well, that's like, so it's similar to ICAR and ASE. You know, we're accredited through the Auto Glass Safety Council. So we have our, you know, our shop was audited and accredited. We actually had an outside firm come in and watch us do installations. They watched our CSRs, answer phones. They watched how we documented our process. But the biggest thing you want to watch for is make sure they have that RG number, that registered shop number from the state. Then you know they're following a basic criteria to do auto glass replacement, because the standard is built into that RG. The standard is also part of a lot of the OEM manufacturers. ICAR, when they do training, they use the standard on the training itself. So look for those, you know, the certificates. Ask them how they were trained and who trained them.
The whole aspect, once the vehicle, this particular one, the slide that we're looking at now, shows the fact that the green line is actually right on the item that it's seeing.
Exactly.
And so the calibration took.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important, because now it's seeing the telephone pole, the stop sign, the line in the middle of the road, exactly where it should be. You know, and we talked about it. It's just that 16th of an inch.
It doesn't take much. Yeah.
It doesn't take much to knock it off. And from the collision standpoint, there are so many sensors on the front of the vehicle aside from the windshield. You know, you deal primarily with the fact that when a glass is replaced, windshield, because of that front-facing camera. But what the consumer, the vehicle owner, needs to understand is that the ADAS system is basically 360 degrees.
Yep.
And has become more and more evolved. You know, it's seeing a vehicle coming up on your right-hand side before you even see it in your side view mirror.
Yeah, those cameras are actually based in the mirrors now. That's some of the technologies right there.
To get the better view.
Correct.
And lane changing, things of that nature. Vehicles will not let you go over to the next lane if it senses a vehicle there. It's fantastic. Yeah. But that's the key to calibration, to getting back to what it was before the accident or before the glass had to be replaced. So, you know, we talked about the fact that there are so many systems that are linked together. You know, even a side glass, right? If you have to replace a side glass, do you run into issues with calibration there as well? So
a lot of the side windows have the auto pinch. So those have to be recalibrated. And you have also
What's an auto pinch?
So if you stick your fingers in the, that has to be recalibrated.
Right.
But you know, you go back to the calibration itself. The consumer still doesn't understand what it's about. They don't understand the static, the dynamic, the dual.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
So the static is a board process where the camera is put in front of a rack, and the camera is made to relearn itself on the board. So it's a dot matrix that it has to do. The dynamic is when they drive it. So they drive it for 4 or 5 miles on a straight road so that the car can relearn the lines, the signs, and the distance specifically for brake. A dual is both, both the static and the dynamic. And it's a simple process, but when you're talking to customers about the process as a whole, not just the customer, well, we're talking about insurance agents and we're talking about insurance companies that don't understand it, because the technology has gone so far ahead of us that we need to catch up and teach it. And the awesome part of we're talking about the commercials on the City Safe and that Subaru commercial where the guy stopped short. That's perfect, because now the consumer is asking those questions now to us. So when the consumer is getting that windshield done in their yard, they're calling us afterwards and say, all right, what do I do next? Well, you should have called us first. That's beside the point, but then we walk them through the process of getting that recalibration, which we can do in our shop, or we connected with a series of customers that we deal with that they can get it done. But the biggest problem that the industry as a whole is the education aspect of it.
Right. Well, and even from the education standpoint now, and you alluded to it, is the reluctancy, for lack of a better way of putting it, of an insurance company to cover a lot of that expense.
Yes.
And I know in the collision side of the issue, we are having to turn more and more towards the consumer, the vehicle owner, and saying, just like your doctor, I am performing procedures that are meant to save your life, to keep your quality of life, however you want to put it. And I take on a huge responsibility and liability when I do that, and there's indeed a significant cost associated with that. That, in years past, I think the collision repair industry and probably the glass industry kind of said, yeah, I won't bother my customer with that. Yeah. But it's getting to the point that just the scanner alone could cost you $14,000 or $15,000, let alone the training for the technician. And then the technician knows that they have an expertise. They should be getting properly, paid for that expertise, right, and taking on the liability for them.
Well, just the proper environment to do the calibration itself. We're in the process of putting that together in our shop. That section of the shop is going to cost me at the end around $150,000.
Right.
Just to have a section of the shop to do a calibration.
And it has to be devoted to that.
Devoted to that specific.
Right. So it's not like you have, and I forget the square footage. I think you have to have 50 feet,
yep,
in front or in back of the
level floor, blank wall, no obstructions.
Right. And when you say blank wall, it's specific color tone.
Exactly.
It's not just no, pictures hanging. It means a specific color tone as well.
Yep. All the Kill Bill posters had to go to the other shop.
Right.
So, yeah.
And that is something that consumers have to understand.
Yeah.
And they have to understand, and I think you alluded to it, that it's no longer, potentially a 2-hour process. It could be something that could take 3 to 4 hours by the time you do a static or a dynamic
when
calibration.
you get into the higher end vehicles like the Porsche and the Audis and the Volkswagens and some of the Nissans now, their OE manufacturers requiring a 4-wheel alignment. So that's a half a day.
Right, and for a 4-wheel alignment, you need to make sure all your fluids are topped off.
Yes,
in a lot of instances, when it comes to, and the consumer shouldn't take it personal when they're asked how much they weigh, because there are certain manufacturers that require you to put weight equal to that of the driver in the driver's seat in order to do a proper wheel alignment.
I haven't been able to ask that question.
Yeah. Well, it depends on.
I learned that from the wife. You don't ask that question.
So, as you said, and I know there are many facilities, collision and glass facilities, that are looking at putting in these calibration stations, basically. But as you said, it's a huge investment.
Oh, yeah.
Space, and again, it has to be dedicated. It's not like when aluminum came out, it was the same thing that a collision repairer had to go through, is because of the cross-contamination between aluminum and metal, they had to devote a certain section of their shop. Can't use the same equipment on metal, steel or iron as well as aluminum. Everything has to be completely isolated. And that's a huge expense for not a really great return on your investment.
No.
And that's something that the consumer has to understand, again, is that we as an industry are doing what we can to protect you, the consumer, but there's a cost associated with that, and your insurance companies aren't always willing to step up to that. There's, insurers trying to use the lingo. Well, it says that it's recommended; it's not required.
LKQ.
Like, kind, and quality. Yeah. In order to save themselves money on the premiums you've already paid them to indemnify you, to make you whole again.
Yeah.
It doesn't say anything in there that, we're only going to pay for certain procedures.
And not to interrupt, but that's the process right now that we're in, is because there's no LKQ for recalibration. You can do all the physical processes before that, but the recalibration is alone and by itself. And that technology cannot be duplicated. It can't be remanufactured. It's right there in front of you, and you have to. It's not a physical thing. It's a peripheral thing. And to do it properly, you need the technician, you need the equipment, and you need the expertise to do it. So if you're going to do a mobile operation, great. Partner yourself up with a company that does recalibrations. There's a lot of them that do it in-house. There's a tire company, that has the green logo. There's 45 shops within the Northeast region that can do the recalibration for you. You have to do the replacement. Partner up with the dealerships. A lot of the dealerships will take care of that for you. They'll let you do the windshield at their place. If you do that, let them do the calibration.
Right.
But the consumer has to understand that this process is an important process. It's not cleaning the window. It's not making sure the seats are clean or vacuumed. When you get in that car, you want to make sure that when you have that auto brake assist, it's stopping where it's supposed to stop.
Right. The whole issue of having relationships with your local dealers, as far as
Yeah.
the collision repair industry is the same thing. We have to make sure that we have confidence in who we're taking it to.
Exactly.
Because unfortunately, our society has become very, very litigious.
Yes.
The minute there's any kind of an issue, the insurance company looks for any opportunity to deny a claim. So negligence, even though you have liability insurance within your business, if they can show that you were negligent, that you didn't do something you knew you should, regardless of it being paid for or not, the liability falls to you. And it's truly cradle to grave. They go back through that history of a vehicle,
Documentation.
find out who it is that touched it. That's why part of the calibration system, there are companies out there that have developed programs that as you are doing the dynamic test, it records the fact that you did it, so that you can also hand that to the customer and say, you know what, as per your OEM or manufacturer's recommendations and requirements, I drove this vehicle for 45 minutes and I maintained this for speed, this average, it was this length of time, and now the report shows that everything is working properly and I can confidently give you back your vehicle.
Right.
So, Pete, I just want to thank you again for coming and joining us today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully we'll have you on again in the near future.
I would enjoy that. We've been doing this a long time, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here with us. And again, I just want to remind everyone that, if you have any need for this type of information, on top of having it aired on the cable station, we also post these shows on our website, AASP-MA.org. It's under the Consumers tab. Our past shows are there as well for you to reference. If you have any questions at all, feel free. There's a Contact Us button on the website, and we're here to help you. And we want to make sure that you do understand all the aspects, not just dealing with the glass side of things, but we have future guests lined up that are one of these companies that have been brought on because of the need for ADAS calibration. They've started a company that they do the post scanning and calibrations, produce reports, and they have some horror stories to tell us too, because again, as Pete and I mentioned, when you look at a glass, it may look fine, but if you don't have the report that shows that it was calibrated and you're confident that the vehicle is going to be acting properly, you could be driving an issue down the road. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm Lucky Papageorg, the Executive Director of AASP, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of AutoSense. Thank you.